Hi folks, once again, it's Santa Cruz's #1 Google Slides live stream. Once again, I am assaulting your fragile brain palaces with some more of that dream nonsense. Some of that selections from Artemidorus of Daldis, the Aneira Criticon, the dream interpreter. Now, I got some disturbing reports actually over the last week or so, indicating that some of the dreams I'm talking about, people are having them after they hear this broadcast. So this stream is infecting your dreams with terrible little ideas. And if you have a dream about, say, ants, after you've watched this stream or watched it on YouTube, it doesn't matter which medium you consume it through. Well, that dream actually is meaningless. It's just a dream that's been prompted by seeing this stream and imbibing the powerful content that it contains. So it's not a dream that means anything. And that's not my goal at all. Actually, I don't want to infiltrate your dreams or anything like that. I want you to have important, meaningful dreams of your own that you can then interpret to tell the future because they are messages sent to you directly from Zeus. So after today's episode, I'm going to be doing a little bit of a hiatus from Artemidorus dream stuff, moving on to some other series that I got planned. But I did want to do this last one. Talk about, I don't know, sometimes how reality just is like that and does get inside your head, infects your mind and causes you to dream about certain things. And Artemidorus, says this is a problem, sort of, for dream interpretation. He says that if, you've been thinking really hard about something and you have a dream about it, of course you'll dream about it. It's what you've been thinking about during the day, and that dream is not particularly meaningful. But then there are these other areas of just kind of common cultural or political life that get inside everybody's head. Everybody seems to be dreaming about. And those areas are sometimes way different than the ones that we worry about today. And the example that I want to talk about now is, from Artemidorus, is statues. Statues, probably not something you think so much about now, right? Not something you think about on a day-to-day basis. Certainly not something you're likely to dream about. I've never dreamt about a statue. But Artemidorus, chronicles a number of dreams that people have about statues. Apparently it's a fairly common dream for people to have in the ancient world. And it falls under the heading of things that aren't exactly natural to dream about, but aren't at the same time like stuff you're dreaming about just because you're worrying about it either. These kind of cultural objects, which Artemidorus says, it's got to be something that you would at least consider significant if you saw one in the street that plays a significant role in your life. These trivial objects don't really attract dream attention. They don't excite our dreams. They're not the kind of things that the gods would use to signal things to us through our dreams. So statues for us, they're just things in museums. We don't worry about them too much. They're these trivial objects that don't occupy our dream space, but in the ancient world, statues are an appreciably bigger deal. They're more important. They're not just this kind of huge public honor. You get a statue made of you. But they're kind of the main way of becoming famous, right? They're the way that you become well known as an individual, as a star. They're the main way, actually, that we kind of know what ancient people look like. This is a statue bust, for instance, of the Emperor Hadrian. We know what he looks like because we've got all these statues of him. Presumably did not have that large crack in the bottom of his face in real life, but that's how we know what he looks like, and that's how everyone knew what he looked like. Anyone who is well known in antiquity. Statues are a way of immortalizing people, memorializing people. We've got lots and lots of other ways of doing that. Photographs, paintings, films, things of that nature. But in the ancient world, statues really play that role. They're the premier kind of public visual medium And they're often like placed really centrally in cities. So you can't ignore these statues. If you're walking around Athens, you cannot miss the statues, the honorary statues of various people in the middle of town. For that reason alone, statues are something that people think about a lot. Either you're trying to get one made of you, or you're looking at the ones that have been made of other people and thinking about those statues and what they mean. And this is extra true for the Roman Empire. Thinking about an empire that big in the ancient world, it presents a lot of big problems of communication, of kind of information transfer, organization. And one big one is this: well, how do you know who's in charge? Who is the boss of the Roman world? Well, the information in terms of official edicts and things of that nature can propagate pretty slowly. You don't want to depend also on forms of legitimacy claim that require people to be literate, because not most people are not literate in the Roman world. So the visual ways of letting people know who is the boss are really important. And this is especially true during, say, a chaotic period like the 3rd century, where there are dozens of empires in a decade, sometimes 5 in 1 year, sometimes 3 at once. So the question of who's in charge is really up in the air. And it does matter who can lay claim to these kinds of visual legitimacy establishers, which are of two flavors basically in the Roman world. One is coins, which is good. People use coins a lot. People have coins in their pocket. You put your portrait and your name on a coin. That's great. But not everybody uses the kinds of coins that an emperor puts his face on, right? So if you're talking about the kind of coinage that people use on the daily, you're talking about mostly small change, which is minted by cities. It's minted locally, so it's not going to carry that emperor's face necessarily. It's going to carry a local icon, maybe the emperor's name, but again, not everyone's literate. Statues get around a lot of these problems, right? Because they're public. They're not in somebody's pocket. Everybody looks at them. Even poor people look at statues. Statues are a way of saying, hey, this is what I look like. I am the king of the world. In a really important sense, then, statues hold the Roman Empire together. Portrait statues of the emperors are super common for this reason, that they're part of the way that an emperor says, hey, I'm the emperor. They're how you know what the emperor looks like, how you get a view of the emperor, and so often kind of these imperial statues are going to make the emperor look a little bit younger and more sexy than he actually is. Kind of in the same way as, statues are how you know what the gods look like. These aren't figures you're ever actually going to see in person, but you know them from their statues. You know what they look like on the basis of their statues. So they have this important function, this political function of explaining who the emperor is. It's kind of there are these obligatory statues of the emperor which show up in every big town, and you had better pay attention to them. So what does it mean if you dream of a statue in this situation in the Roman Empire? Well, if you're an everyday person, it means fear. Statues are something that, if you see in a dream, are supposed to be terrifying. They mean that terrifying events are going to befall you. Statues are a bad sign. Well, there's a kind of a genre thing here. Like, normal-sized bronze statues mean prosperity, but the bigger, like, stone statues, which imperial statues are for the most part, those ones mean terror. Those statues terrorize you. Artemidorus goes so far as to say that the statues represent the leaders of the Commonwealth. They're the big people, the scary people. He says, well, that's why that's why statues represent a cause of fear, right? Because everybody basically is just trying to avoid catching the attention of these giant, awful people the rulers of the Roman world, the emperors, or more local political magnates who also represent themselves through statues a lot, you're just trying to avoid catching their eye, because if they spot you, they'll think you're a tasty little morsel and they'll eat you right up. So that's why in Artemidorus' Roman world, statues equal terror. It's because of their political use. It's because they're attached to elements of the Roman political system that function on the basis of terror. An emperor ruled by fear. Well, it is a good thing that we live now in a democracy and don't have to deal with any of that, of course. It would be very nasty if we did have figures in our polity that were intended just to terrify us and to cow us and to make us try to avoid attracting their attention. And of course, it would be a real bad situation if the state were to use those figures of terror against us. It might even eventually make democracy itself untenable. One would hope that if any of that were to come to pass, we would notice in time and fight back and reclaim this democracy that we supposedly live in.